All right, good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you for your interest in our webinar series. My name is Darren Lewis, and I'm the Manager of Client and Regulatory Services here at I4I, and I'll be providing the intros for today. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar focusing on REMS and the upcoming mandatory requirements for REMS in SPL. Our presenters today will be colleagues of mine you may be familiar with from our previous sessions and other industry events. Jacqueline Brunner, I4I's Senior Director of Encoding Technology, will start things off with an introduction of REMS and where it fits within the pharmaceutical landscape. And then she'll pass things over to Amanpreet Kanth, I4I's Regulatory Affairs Team Lead, to expand on options for creating REMS SPLs and then its associated submission process. As usual, before we dive in, I'd like to go over a bit of WebEx housekeeping. During the webinar, all microphones will be muted except for the presenters. If you do experience an echo, check that your mic has remained muted in the WebEx window. The microphone icon should be red and have a cross through it. If any echo persists and you're using a phone for your audio, mute all audio devices on your computer to ensure you're not connected twice. Following our regular webinar format, we'll open the floor up for questions at the end of our session. If you have a question at any point during the webinar, please type it into the chat area of the WebEx window. To do this, click the chat button, then choose host from the dropdown and enter your question in the chat message area. You can also use the new Q&A section of the WebEx. We'll get messages sent to both. If you don't see these options, you can click the View menu and select Show Meeting Controls option. If we cannot answer your question during the live Q&A session, we'll contact you afterwards directly with a follow-up. That is all from me for now. I'll pass things over to Jacqueline Brunner to get things started on REMS and the REMS requirements.
Thank you, Darren, and hello, everyone. We're going to start off today's presentation by familiarizing you with REMS, and then we're going to look at the REMS template. After that, we're going to look at REMS in the context of SPL, which I'm sure you're all familiar with SPL at least. And after that, Almond's going to show you how to create REMS in SPL using one of our solutions, and then give you a lowdown on submitting your REMS in SPL. And as Darren mentioned, we're going to have a Q&A session and answer any questions that you have at the end, so please do submit those. So we're going to start at the beginning, though, and have an overview of REMS. First of all, what is REMS? REMS is a risk evaluation and mitigation strategy. It's a plan that the FDA might require for certain medications that have serious side effects. And the focus of REMS is on mitigating serious risk, not all adverse events, which the labeling already covers most of them. So the FDA can require a REMS before approval or after approval if new safety information comes to light. And to determine if a REMS might be necessary, the FDA considers a few factors, such as the size of the population that are likely to use the medication, the seriousness of the illness or the condition that the drug treats, and the seriousness or the likelihood of potential adverse events. The core purpose of REMS is to reinforce the safe use of a medication, which should in turn reduce the frequency and severity of any adverse events. Not all risk can be eliminated from some medications, so REMS also strives to monitor and manage any serious risks. And it's done by providing information, education, and reinforcing actions related not only to the medication prescribing, but also actions to be done before, during, and after treatment. And the target for these actions aren't just the prescribers and the dispensers. The patients and the distributors can also have a part to play in REMS. So I mentioned REMS mitigating risk, but there's actually 4 types of risk that REMS focuses on. The first one is serious infection. And to mitigate this risk, the REMS focus is on the patient and providing them with information and awareness on the signs to watch for. The second risk is severe allergic reaction. And for that risk, the REMS focuses on the healthcare professional. They might need to get certification to administer the medication and be made aware of any signs or symptoms of risk to watch for. Liver damage is another risk, and that's monitored while the patient is taking the medication. So the focus would again be on the healthcare professional. And finally, birth defects will require patient action, such as a negative pregnancy test, before the medication be dispensed. So for that kind of risk, the main onus of the risk is on the prescriber and also on the dispenser to check to verify the pregnancy test. So while each type of risk has a main stakeholder that plays a large part in the risk, in the REMS rather, there's going to be many stakeholders involved in each one. So you may be wondering why you're all of a sudden hearing about REMS a little bit more lately. It's all because of that date that's highlighted in pink on this slide, December the 28th, 2022, which is coming up very soon. But let's go back to 2004. In that year, the FDA introduced the concept of risk maps, risk minimization action plans. Those are for drugs with safety issues. It was the first attempt by the FDA to work with sponsors to manage risk. And the onus of creating these risk maps was up to the manufacturer. They had to present their plan to the FDA for approval. In 2008, the FDA first gained the authority to require REMS as part of an NDA, ANDA, or BLA. And by the end of 2008, there was over 20 REMS documents approved, most of them only containing a med guide, and they were made available via PDF. In 2009, the FDA included the first REMS template in the draft guidance. And 8 years later, in 2017, the REMS template was updated based on some feedback from the stakeholders. Stakeholders were finding that the requirements in the old template weren't written clearly and consistently. Determining who was responsible for implementing each REMS was very ambiguous. It's hard to determine. It was time-consuming to try to understand and comply with the REMS, and the REMS couldn't be easily integrated into existing healthcare information systems. So this updated template from 2017 ballooned to 21 pages, which seems like a lot, but it really isn't. The REMS contains a REMS participant requirements section, which is actually filled with an inventory of standardized text to be used. The standardized text was taken from existing REMS documents. This makes the requirement wording more consistent, predictable, and easier to understand and digest. There's also a lot of instructional text in this new template and standardized text options to choose from. So as I mentioned, this template is 21 pages long, and a good chunk of it is taken up by the requirements section, but there is more to it than that. So I'm going to familiarize you a little bit with the whole template. All REMS must include product and contact information, and also a statement of goals, the REMS goals. A good chunk of the template is taken up by the requirements section, as I said earlier, and the REMS requirements are the key to the REMS. That's what used to actually mitigate the drug's risk. A timetable for submission of assessments of the REMS by the applicant is also generally required. And then REMS materials is going to be usually needed because that's where you include all the documentation needed for the REMS. And we'll look at all of these sections a little bit in this section of the presentation. So first, I'm going to focus on the REMS requirements section now because it is the most complex, but also the most instrumental in the REMS success. The first principle of REMS requirements are the 4 W's: who, when, what, and with what. The who is the participant that has to meet the REMS requirements. So it could be the prescriber, the dispenser, or even the patient. When is the stage during the treatment or medication use that the REMS activity needs to take place. What is the actual activity that needs to happen at that stage in the treatment. And with what is the tool that they might need to use for this. In the case of REMS, it might be a medication guide or an enrollment form. So using these 4 W's, the REMS requirements are organized into a logical hierarchy, as I'm going to show you in the next slide. So at the top level of the REMS requirements section hierarchy, there's one or more stakeholders. Those are the who, or Ws. The stakeholders specify who needs to meet the set of requirements. And it could be, as I said earlier, the prescriber, the dispenser, the overall healthcare setting, or the patient. Within each stakeholder, there's one or more protocols, and the protocols map to the when of the 4 Ws. Each protocol is a stage in the medication regimen during which a requirement needs to be met. So, for example, there could be a requirement for certification for dispensing or prescribing. There'd be requirements to be done before administration, and there might also be some to be done during and after treatment. Each protocol has one or more requirements within it, and these are the whats of the 4 Ws. Requirements specify what has to be done at that stage in the treatment. And the requirements in the template come from existing REMS documents, so they all have standardized language and they're easy to read and understand. Some examples could be counsel the patient, assess the patient's health status, complete a patient care form. And the lowest level of the requirement hierarchy is the document references, or the with what of the 4 Ws. Each requirement can have one or more of these. And I mentioned that an example requirement would be to complete a patient care form. The actual form is the with what, or the document reference. Some examples could be enrollment forms, medication guides, or educational materials. So here's a visual of this requirement hierarchy. You can see the who at the top level with multiple whens underneath. Each when has one or more whats, and the whats can have a with what if there's something that needs to be completed with the what. So it's actually quite readable. In this example, for instance, we can see that the healthcare providers, the who, to become certified to prescribe the medication, when, have to enroll in the REMS, that's the what, using the prescriber enrollment form, the with what. And also the patients, the who, every 6 months during treatment, which is the when, receive counseling from the prescriber, the what, using the patient care guide, which is the with what. So this new template benefits all the stakeholders using it. Remember I mentioned earlier that REMS were previously done in PDF. At that time, the onus was on the manufacturer to organize it and write their REMS. It meant that different REMS documents had different sections within them and used different language. The new template provides both the sections and a lot of boilerplate text to use, so it means that the authoring time and the approval time are significantly reduced. The boilerplate text also helps users of the REMS. There can be a lot of protocols and requirements in a REMS document, so by having all the language be the same in all of them means that stakeholders can understand and use them effectively. REMS documents can be very long, but stakeholders are able to focus on the information that's crucial to them and prevent what they call information overload, because the who sections are all separated into individual areas. And of course, if the REMS is easier to read and follow, it means there's going to be an increase in patient safety, which is the purpose of these. The REMS materials is where all the tools needed for a REMS go. And once again, it's all in one section, so it's easy to find all of those. So the key takeaway is that this new template makes the REMS more accessible to all of the stakeholders. And then, of course, as I said earlier, this will help with patient safety. So the new template for REMS was a very big change, but an even bigger change is the requirement that REMS be in the SPL format. And that, as I said earlier, is happening right around the corner in December of this year. REMS offers a ton of SPL offers a ton of advantages over non-SPL REMS files, though, and I'm going to go into that a little bit. With SPL, you have the option to use controlled vocabularies in text, which is perfect for the REMS, as the requirement text is very controlled in the latest template. As well, we're all online most of the time now, so it makes sense to have REMS in a format that you can easily find on the internet. The REMS documents can be posted to any number of websites, including Daily Med and online at rems.fda. Different style sheets could be applied for different websites, in fact, and the materials that are referenced in the REMS and SPL documents are clickable links, so those are also easy to access. SPL also makes the REMS a searchable document, and in a few ways. First, SPL documents and the REMS have a ton of metadata. The protocols, the requirements, and all of the materials are held as metadata. And metadata means easier searching, as you all know from SPL, because you can find your information much easier with SPL. You also have a link between the REMS and the related drug listing SPL, and within the REMS itself, there's a style sheet that could filter the requirements by participants, so they'd only see what pertains to them. And the REMS in SPL would be easily available online, as I already mentioned, but that would also allow it to be used downstream by other entities like research and data vendors. Finally, there's a potential to integrate the REMS directly into healthcare processes and systems. And I've got a couple of use cases here showing the potential future of REMS. In the first scenario, a doctor doesn't realize that there's a REMS for a drug that they're about to prescribe. They have a prescriber-based system that automatically alerts them to any REMS in which they have requirements to follow. In this case, one of the requirements is to provide the patient with counseling materials. The prescriber can easily grab these materials, print them off, and hand them to the patient. In the second scenario, there's a pharmacist who's about to dispense a medication. The pharmacy system sends a notification alerting the pharmacist of the need for a test result before the drug can be dispensed. In this perfect world, the pharmacist system can access the lab system and verify that there is a negative test on file. So let's get a little bit more into the detail of REMS and SPL. Before you start on this project, you're going to have to gather a few things. First, you're going to need your product listing SPL for the medication. The REMS needs to include the set ID, the brand name, generic name, and all the marketing information from your product listing SPL. You're also going to need marketing authorization holder name and DUNS from the SPL as well. You're going to obviously need your REMS content, and you might have to rework your REMS content to fit it with the new template. You'll also need the FDA's REMS template, so you have a place to put your content into. And you'll need any materials that are mentioned in the REMS, and that would include your enrollment forms, training assessments, guides, status forms, reporting forms, etc. And those would be PDFs, or they might be links to websites. And the last thing you need is an understanding about how to apply the protocols and the REMS and the requirement metadata. So it's not a trivial process. So here's a quick look at a little portion of the REMS template. As I mentioned, it's 21 pages. You've got the REMS goals section near the top, and that's where you're going to state each goal of the REMS and the related objectives. After this, you've got the REMS requirements section, which is the largest section in the template. And within this section, there's a subsection for each stakeholder. Each stakeholder has protocols, and each protocol has one or more associated requirements. And then there's the assessment timetable section and also the REMS material section after that. So there's a lot of content in the REMS. But the template includes a ton of really clearly written instructional text in the requirements section, and the protocol section especially. It's really helpful. It helps you determine if you need to include a section or not. So, for instance, in this sample, we have to become certified to prescribe, and the instructional text says, include this timing category if there's requirements that a healthcare provider must complete to be able to prescribe. And we also have the first numbered item. The requirement is be able to, and then clinical activity be performed. And the instructional text clearly states when to include this requirement. There's also a lot of placeholder text throughout. And again, especially in the requirements section, to become certified to prescribe this placeholder text, and so is to be able to, the first item number, that's placeholder text, with instructional text, fill in the blank text there in the square brackets beside it. So you can easily just fill it in or leave it as is, as needed. The template does really help with the authoring, but another huge chunk of the REMS and SPL is the coding. And that's what gives REMS the consistency and accessibility and integration ability. So it's kind of a big deal. Each protocol is coded, so is each requirement. Each requirement can also have further metadata that indicates if it should be delayed and by how long. And the materials are also directly linked to each requirement. And these relationships and the coding allow the REMS to be used by the downstream processes, including by style sheets. So there is an SPL style sheet that I think you're all familiar with. And the beauty of REMS, having REMS in SPL is that it can use the same style sheet. The content is formatted differently than the drug listing SPL because it's a very unique type of document. And you can see in this sample on this slide, we have the steps for each stakeholder are written as they are in the template, but below there's another table that summarizes the content using this metadata. But it's displayed in a way that's really simple and easy to understand, and that is the REMS coding. And you can see on the first line of that table that it says basically before REMS certification, the medication prescriber must review prescribing information using the prescriber training. There's also links attached to each requirement, and those would take you to the detailed requirement text. And the materials section also has links that take you directly to the materials, so you can read them as you go. I am now going to pass things over to my colleague, Amanpreet, to talk about how we can help you with your REMS creation and updates, and also about the REMS submission process. And don't forget that at the end of our presentation, we're going to have a Q&A, so please use the WebEx chat to send us your REMS-related questions.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and hello, everyone. So we've looked at what you need to do to update or create your REMS. Let's look now at how we can help you with this. So iFry's got you covered with two solutions. First, we have our software application, A4L. You can use A4L to create and manage your REMS SPL or any other type of SPL or XML PM without having to worry about the XML tags and controlled vocabulary codes, and also use it for publishing the REMS content in Word format. We also offer conversion services where we do the work of updating and creating your REMS SPL for you. And we provide complete assistance with submission generation, submission to FDA ESG, and provide full error resolution support. A4L software solution helps you create the REMS in SPL and also Word and PDF formats using our specialized templates. And it makes updating your existing REMS to SPL or creating brand new REMS SPL a very straightforward process. Let's take a look at how. In A4L, you author your REMS SPL in the familiar Microsoft Word environment. The application has starter templates that include all the structured sections with the controlled vocabulary codes and also the standardized language of the narrative content in place. Converting your legacy content is also easy, and so is adding the product and company metadata along with the REMS coding. You can preview your submissions using the official FDA style sheet directly within the application. And we have tried and tested our application during the REMS pilot program. The pilot allowed us to work with the FDA and sponsors directly to validate the procedures and coding and be able to contribute to the REMS modernization. To create a REMS SPL, we need to first gather all the data that's required, such as the supplemental files, including the supporting materials and the associated product SPL file. We'll then add our REMS narrative content, link the materials, add REMS metadata or the coding in the summary tables, and finally import the product SPL. Importing a product SPL allows to automate the entry of product data elements and hence avoids manual data entry errors. Finally, our built-in validation helps keep a check on any unwanted formatting as well as errors that may result in submission failures. So first we'll collect the related drug product SPL file or files in case multiple products are involved. And just to clarify, a REMS that includes more than one product but only a single applicant is not considered a shared system REMS. A shared system REMS encompasses multiple prescription drug products and is developed and implemented jointly by two or more applicants, meaning that it can involve multiple NDAs or ANDAs or even multiple BLAs. You also require all of the material files, such as enrollment forms and educational materials, in the PDF format or website links. So refer to the specific documents that participants need to use to comply with a requirement. When submitting new, modified, or format updates to REMS, the REMS content should be aligned to the latest template format. If you're starting from scratch, you can manually enter text and select content from controlled vocabulary lists in a specialized AFRL templates. If you're migrating from an older template format, you can simply copy-paste the content into the structured sections available within the template. However, if you happen to have the REMS document in the latest format, then in that case, you could make use of our Convert from Word feature that will organize all the content into individual structured sections with coding automatically applied in the background as per FDA's requirements. REMS materials are supporting documents or web resources that are used to help fulfill a requirement. For example, if a patient enrollment form is required to dispense the medicine, you can add the form to the REMS document as a REMS material. And we know that the REMS materials can be either PDF files or URLs. So these materials are included as a hyperlink within the requirement text that directs readers to the material. In addition, a comprehensive list of all REMS materials is also included at the end of the REMS document. During submission generation, the materials added in PDF format are appended to the REMS SPL document and are available in the final submission ready folder as separate PDF files along with the REMS SPL XML file. After adding the materials, you need to author the content in the REMS summary tables if you haven't already done so. Each summary table is divided into two columns, a protocol column to the left and a requirements column to the right. The protocol column describes the stage in the REMS process of using the drug, such as before treatment initiation or after treatment discontinuation. The requirements column lists the requirements of the stakeholder group at each stage in the REMS process described in the protocol column. For the REMS in SPL format, we need to further enhance the summary tables by linking the REMS coding or the REMS metadata as shown earlier in the presentation. The FDA uses standardized terminology so that protocols and requirements are consistent from one REMS to another. These REMS terms or REMS codes must be inserted to define each protocol and requirement in the REMS document. You will also be able to link the REMS material via AFRL in these summary tables during this step. AFRL REMS template include these codes as controlled vocabulary lists, simplifying the creation of a REMS SPL. To complete our REMS SPL, we need to import the product SPL related to the REMS. And AFRL's import feature will automatically bring in only the specific product SPL metadata that's applicable to the REMS SPL. No typing is required. And this helps reduce manual data entry errors and also reduces the overall SPL creation time. Finally, we'll validate the REMS SPL by utilizing AFRL's built-in validation tool. This validation process checks for all of the FDA's SPL implementation guide rules related to REMS SPL, which is its narrative content, metadata, schema, the overall structure of the document, etc. As you saw earlier, the SPL style sheet is designed to also display the REMS in SPL. And after you validate your file, you may want to review your REMS in this style sheet and then generate a final REMS SPL. You can do this directly from within A4L. You'll notice that the REMS coding appears in a separate table right underneath the summary tables as per the FDA style sheet dictation. The requirements column shows us the FDA controlled vocabularies which were selected from the drop-downs in AFRL REMS template. The document column lists the REMS materials that were referenced. In addition to software, i4i offers document conversion services whereby we take care of all aspects of your REMS SPL conversion needs and deliver the submission documents directly to you. We use the same AFRL software application as our customers, and a team of regulatory specialists is ready when you need them. We provide complete assistance and guide you through the submission and approval, working with you to resolve any issues. And the SPL is reviewed and validated internally to provide you with compliant submission files. To initiate the process, you simply send us your data through safe and secure sources provided by us or through your internal system. This data is then stored within our secure internal network on protected machines. Our team of regulatory specialists will author and validate your REMS SPL using our AFRL software against the latest FDA validation rules. After publishing the SPL, it's sent to you for your review and approval. Finally, the REMS SPL is submitted to FDA if applicable in your scenario. If you receive errors from the submission gateway or during your review process, we provide complete assistance until the SPL is successfully accepted by the FDA. Let's discuss how to submit the REMS SPL. So we know that applicants are required to submit the content of their REMS document electronically in SPL format for all REMS documents submitted to FDA on or after December 28, 2022. This would include REMS documents associated with new REMS, as well as REMS documents submitted as part of REMS modifications. In addition, beginning December 28, 2022, REMS revision submissions that include REMS documents that are already in SPL format must remain in SPL format. While REMS revision submissions that includes REMS documents that have not yet been converted to SPL format do not need to be converted to SPL format until their next modification is submitted. So FDA does not expect submission solely to convert to the new format. Submission of Word or PDF documents is not necessary for conversion of a REMS to SPL. If a sponsor were submitting a new REMS or a modification to a REMS and choosing to do so in SPL, then in that case, FDA recommends they also continue to submit in Word format to facilitate the exchange of comments with the review team via ECTD application, just how you do currently. Applicants that are developing a shared system REMS should submit their REMS by application midpoint for pending applications or another time frame specified by the agency. To facilitate submission tracking, it's recommended that shared system REMS applicants work together to coordinate their submissions on the same day if possible. And just to note, REMS documents are not required to be updated based on a time factor, but rather when there are changes to the safety information, administrative procedures, or additional information for patients which affects the REMS program.
Thank you, Aman and Jacqueline. We're ready to move on to our Q&A portion of our session. If you haven't already sent your questions in, then please feel free to do so now using the WebEx chat panel or the WebEx Q&A panel. We'll pause for a minute or two to review the questions. Also, if you're watching the recording of this presentation and you want to send us a question, please contact our i4i support team at support@i4i.com. Again, if you have any questions after this, please email support@i4i.com and we'd be happy to get back to you. Thank you very much for your attendance this afternoon. We hope you found this useful and informative. And please look for future webinars coming from i4i in the following months. Thank you very much.